The energy storm hit Nexus Prime just as the slave markets closed for the night. Purple lightning carved jagged paths between the towering spires, while electromagnetic pulses knocked out half the district's power grid. Her move. The Valorian woman had been planning her escape for weeks, memorizing the guards' patterns, the weakness in her energy shackles, the exact timing of the power cycles. Her pale blue skin bore fresh welts from the shock collar, and her silver hair hung in matted tangles, but her amber eyes burned with unbroken defiance. Tonight, while the storm raged and the guards huddled in their shelter, she would reclaim her freedom. So shackles sparked and died as another pulse swept through the Crimson Quarter. Kestra wasted no time, using a sharp piece of debris to pry the restraints from her wrists. The metal bit into her palms, drawing luminescent blue blood, but pain was an old companion. She'd endured worse in the fighting pits of 3 different worlds. Thunder crashed overhead as she slipped from the holding cell, her bare feet silent. On the rain-slicked streets, the storm turned the normally bustling quarter into a maze of shadows and abandoned stalls. Neon signs flickered erratically, casting everything in harsh, strobing light. She needed shelter, medical supplies, and a way off this cursed planet before morning brought renewed pursuit. That's when she spotted the small clinic wedged between 2 collapsed buildings, its emergency power still humming softly, a faded sign: Rejoins Medical Services, no questions asked. The windows glowed with warm, steady light that seemed almost impossible in the chaos surrounding it. Kestra hesitated. Every instinct screamed that it was a trap. In her 28 years, kindness had always come with hidden costs. But the storm was intensifying, and the gash on her shoulder needed attention before infection set in. She had no choice. The door opened before she could knock. A human man stood in the doorway, his weathered face calm despite the wild storm. Joran appeared to be in his 50s, with graying temples and gentle brown eyes that immediately assessed her injuries without judgment. His clothes were simple but clean, and his hands bore the careful steadiness of someone who'd spent years healing rather than harming. "You're hurt," he said quietly, stepping aside to let her enter. Kestra tensed, ready to strike if he made any sudden moves. "I have nothing to pay you with. I didn't ask for payment." His voice carried no threat, only tired compassion. "The storm's getting worse. Come inside before you're struck by lightning." She slipped past him into the clinic's main room, her muscles coiled for action. The space was small, but meticulously organized, filled with medical equipment she recognized from various worlds. Everything was clean, functional, and clearly maintained by someone who took pride in his work. Joran closed the door and engaged multiple locks, but then did something unexpected. He placed the key on a nearby table where she could see it, just as he'd seen another man do once in a story that had stayed with him. "Your choice to leave," he said simply. "But let me clean those wounds first. Infection kills faster than bounty hunters." Kestra stared at the key, her breathing shallow. No cage, no chains, just a choice freely given. For the first time in years, she began to hope. 3 days passed in the clinic's quiet sanctuary. Kestra's wounds healed with surprising speed, aided by Joran's skilled care and her own Valorian resilience. The storm had finally broken, leaving the Crimson Quarter steaming under twin suns. But she remained hidden in the back room he'd prepared for her. JORE worked with methodical patience, changing bandages without unnecessary touch, bringing meals at regular intervals, never asking questions about her past. His movements were economical, practiced the hands of someone who'd seen too much war to be shocked by scars. When he cleaned the deep lacerations on her back, his jaw tightened at what the patterns revealed. But he said nothing. "You were military." Kestra observed on the 3rd morning, watching him organize supplies with mechanical precision. "Field medic," he confirmed, not looking up from his inventory. "Spent 15 years patching up soldiers in places that didn't officially exist. Retired when I realized I was better at healing than the war was at creating wounded." She studied his profile, noting the way his shoulders carried invisible weight. "What brought you to this place? Same thing that brought you, I'd guess?" He finally met her gaze. running from something that wouldn't let go. Before she could respond, the clinic's rear entrance chimed softly. Joran's hand moved instinctively toward a concealed weapon, then relaxed as he recognized the visitor. A wiry human with cybernetic implants covering half his skull stepped inside, water dripping from his synthetic coat. Voss Joran acknowledged. With a nod, the information broker's augmented eyes swept the room, lingering on Kestra with calculating interest. Heard you had a guest? Explains why half the sector's buzzing with search parties? Kestra tensed, but Voss raised his hands peacefully. Relax, Blueskin. I'm not here to collect. Professional courtesy Joran's patched up more of my people than I can count. He pulled out a datapad, its screen flickering with intercepted communications. But you've got bigger problems coming. The display showed grainy surveillance footage, Kestra breaking free from her cell, captured by a security drone. Below it, a bounty posting scrolled past, 50,000 credits for her return, alive and undamaged. To premium price, Voss whistled. Lo, someone really wants you back. Problem is, it's not just local muscle anymore. Words reach the guild networks. Professional hunters are incoming. Joran's expression darkened. How long? Day, maybe 2 if the storm delayed their ships. Voss tucked the pad away. My advice? Ghost town protocols, new identity, deep cover, far rim territories where guild influence is thin. Kestra stood abruptly. Pacing to the window, streets below showed signs of increased patrol activity, armored vehicles, scanning drones, checkpoint barriers. The net was tightening. I won't bring trouble to your door, she said firmly, turning back to Joran. I'll leave tonight. Where will you go? His voice was calm, but his eyes showed concern. She had no answer. Her homeworld was ash, her clan scattered, or dead. The fighting circuit had been the only life she'd known before capture, and that path led nowhere but back to chains. Voss cleared his throat. There might be another option. Underground railroad's been moving people off-world through the cargo districts. It's a dangerous route, but it beats the alternative. What's the cost? Kestra asked. Passage runs 10,000, but ... Voss glanced at Joran meaningfully. Doc here's got credit with the network. Saved the Rootmaster's daughter from a bad case of neural plague last year. Joran nodded slowly. I can make the arrangements. No. Kestra's voice carried fierce pride. I've taken enough charity. It's not charity, Joran replied quietly. It's investment. You're worth more than they're offering, and everyone in this room knows it. For a moment, something passed between them: understanding, respect, the recognition of shared strength. Kestra felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest, different from the heat of battle or rage. It was hope, fragile and dangerous as spun glass. One day, she promised, I'll repay the debt. No debt, Joran said. Just promise me you'll stay free. Doubts. The first of the professional hunters was already planetfall, and time was running short. The hunter called herself Nyx, and she was everything the local muscle was not: patient, precise, and utterly without mercy. Where others relied on brute force and obvious intimidation, she moved through the crimson quarter like smoke, gathering information with surgical delicacy. Her reputation preceded her across 12 sectors. A tall, lean woman with ice-white hair and predator's eyes, augmented with tracking implants that could follow genetic traces through crowded spaceports. She wore form-fitting armor that shifted color to match her surroundings, and carried weapons that most civilizations had banned for being too effective. Nyx studied the clinic from across the street, her enhanced vision analyzing heat signatures and electromagnetic patterns. 2 occupants inside, one matching her target's biomarkers perfectly. She'd tracked Valorian fugitives before, proud, fierce, predictable in their refusal to abandon those who showed them kindness. It made them easy to corner it inside the clinic. Joran monitored the street through carefully positioned mirrors. She's been watching for 2 hours. Professional-grade surveillance gear, military posture. This isn't local talent. Kestra finished strapping on the combat gear Voss had provided: reinforced clothing, energy shields, and a pair of curved blades that felt natural in her hands. Guild hunter? Has to be. They don't usually work this sector, which means someone. Paid premium rates? He handed her a small device. Emergency beacon. Press it, and every underground contact in 50 blocks gets your location. And paints a target on anyone who helps, she pointed out. Joran's smile was grim. Sometimes the underground needs to know where the real fight is. The clinic's power suddenly died, plunging them into darkness. Through the windows, you could see neighboring buildings suffering the same FATA localized EMP burst. It's designed to disable security systems and force them into the open. Back exit, Joran whispered. Leading her through the maze of medical equipment toward the rear of the building, they never made it. The wall exploded inward in a shower of debris and plasma fire, revealing Nyx framed against the smoking hole. Her armor had shifted to matte black, and her weapons hummed with barely contained energy. Kestra, of the Valorian Third Fleet, she announced formally, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. By guild charter and imperial bounty warrant, you will surrender for immediate transport. Kestra stepped forward, shielding Joran with her body. I claim right of combat. Single engagement, winner takes all. Nyx tilted her head, considering. Interesting. Most runners just beg or run. But you were a pit fighter, weren't you? Old habits. She holstered one weapon, but kept the other ready. Very well. Traditional rules. No interference. Fight until surrender or incapacitation. The two women began to circle each other in the cramped space, predators taking measure. Nyx was faster, her augmented reflexes giving her an edge in reaction time. But Kestra had spent years learning to read opponents, to find the tells that preceded every attack. They clashed with explosive violence. Energy blasts scorching the air where Kestra had been a split second before. She rolled beneath a sweeping kick, came up with blades extended, and found Nyx already spinning away from the counterstrike. The hunter's armor deflected the glancing blow that would have opened an unprotected throat. Impressive, Nyx acknowledged, breathing hard. But ultimately, futile. She activated something on her gauntlet, and suddenly the room filled with a high-pitched whine that drove Kestra to her knees, clutching her head. Sonic disruptor, calibrated to Valorian neural frequencies. Unfair advantage, Joran growled. Raising a medical scanner that he'd hastily modified. Stay out of this, both women said simultaneously, then glared at each other with something approaching respect. Kestra forced herself upright, vision swimming but determination intact. Honor demands honor's a luxury, Nyx interrupted, raising her weapon for the final shot. But so is unnecessary violence. The energy blast took out the wall behind where Kestra had been standing. In the moment of surprise, she'd closed distance and pressed a blade to the hunter's throat, while Nyx's backup weapon pressed against her ribs. Mutual annihilation. A warrior's draw. They held the position for 3 heartbeats, both realizing that victory would be Pyrrhic at best. Then Nyx did something unexpected. She began to laugh. You know what? She said, stepping back and powering down her weapons. This bounty just got interesting. The standoff stretched for 3 heartbeats before Nyx made an unexpected gesture. She removed her helmet, revealing features that made Kestra's breath catch in her throat. The same amber eyes, the same proud jawline, though unmarked by the scars that decorated Kestra's face. Even the pale blue undertones of her skin were familiar, though Nyx's had been altered by years of surgical enhancement. Hello, sister, Nyx said quietly. The blade in Kestra's hand trembled. Zara, but you died on Valerie's Prime. I saw the orbital bombardment. You saw what you needed to see. Zara's voice carried years of carefully controlled pain. Imperial. Intelligence pulled me out 30 minutes before the first bombs fell. They needed someone who could pass for human, who could hunt the survivors without arousing suspicion. Joran watched the exchange with growing understanding and horror. They turned you into their weapon. Against your own people. Against the resistance. Zara corrected coldly. The war was already lost. I saved lives by ending it quickly. Kestra's grip tightened on her weapons. You saved nothing. You became their hunting hound, tracking down survivors like animals. Survivors like you. Zara's augmented eyes flashed dangerously. Do you know how many planets I've searched? How many dead ends I've followed? I've been hunting you for 8 years, Kestra. 8 years of hoping each bounty would finally bring me to you. To kill me for them, To bring you home? The words hung in the air like a challenge. Kestra shook her head violently. Home is ashes. Home is bones and burned cities. You chose your side when you put on their uniform. Zara's composure finally cracked. I chose survival. I chose the chance that maybe someday I could find the only family I had left and keep. Her alive in a galaxy that wants her dead? She triggered something on her gauntlet. The room filled with holographic displays, surveillance records, travel documents, carefully falsified death certificates. Every bounty I've collected, every target I've brought in have been building a network, creating safe houses, bribing officials. The Underground Railroad Voss mentioned? I've been funding it for 3 years. Joran studied the records, his medical training helping him spot the patterns others might miss. These aren't random captures. We've been systematically removing the most violent hunters from circulation and replacing them with people who understand that some quarry deserves to stay free. Zara's voice was steady now, professional. But this bounty is different. The client isn't Imperial intelligence. It's someone with personal stakes. Someone who won't accept substitutes or false deaths. Kestra's combat stance wavered. Lord, Commander Thane of the Obsidian Fleet. The same man who ordered Valerie's prime sterilized. Zara's enhanced eyes met her sister's. He's been tracking survivors, eliminating them one by one. You're not just a escaped slave, Kestra. You're a witness to war crimes that could topple governments. The weight of revelation settled over them like a shroud. Outside, the sounds of approaching vehicles grew louder. Thane's forces following. The trail Nyx's public bounty hunt had deliberately created. How long? Joran asked. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Zara began repacking her equipment with military efficiency. There's a transport waiting at Dock 7. Clean papers, enough credits to disappear properly. And you, Kestra demanded. File a report claiming you died in the building collapse I'm about to trigger. Buy you time to get clear. Zara paused in her preparations. It's what I should have done 8 years ago. Kestra stepped forward, close enough to see the tears her sister had been hiding. Come with us. Can't. Someone needs to keep the network running, keep others like you safe. Zara's smile was heartbreaking in its resolve. Besides, Thane would never stop hunting if he thought we were both alive. The distant rumble of approaching dropships cut through the moment. Time was running out, and the hardest choice still lay ahead. Trust the sister who'd become a stranger, or face an enemy that commanded fleets. Kestra reached out and touched Zara's augmented cheek. Sister? Sister? Zara whispered back, and for a moment they were children again before the wars and the pain and the impossible choices that had shaped them. Then the hunter put her helmet back on, and the moment passed into memory. The explosion that brought down 3 city blocks made headlines across the sector. Official reports listed 2 casualties, a rogue bounty hunter and her target, both vaporized in a catastrophic reactor overload. Lord Commander Thane's forces found enough genetic material to satisfy bureaucratic requirements and closed the file with characteristic efficiency. They never found the service tunnels Joran had mapped during his years in the district, or the hidden transport that carried 2 passengers to safety while the city burned behind them. 6 months later, on the frontier world of Haven's Rest, Kestra stood in the garden behind a small medical clinic that bore no name but served everyone who needed help. Her pale blue skin had gained healthy color from honest work, and her amber eyes held peace instead of rage. The scars remained, they always would, but they'd become part of her story rather than its ending. Patient in room 3 is asking for you specifically, Joran called from the clinic's back door. He'd traded his weathered jacket for simple medical scrubs, but his hands remained as steady as ever. Says she heard about the Valorian doctor who doesn't ask questions. Kestra smiled, wiping soil from her fingers. The garden was her project, medicinal plants from a dozen worlds, growing side by side in carefully balanced harmony. Like the clinic itself, it offered healing to anyone who needed it, regardless of their past or their ability to pay. The patient was young, maybe 16 standard years, with the hollow eyes and defensive posture Kestra knew all too well. Escaped from a labor camp, judging by the industrial toxins in her bloodstream and the malnutrition that would take months to reverse. I hear you help people disappear, the girl whispered. I help people find themselves, Kestra corrected gently, beginning her examination. What's your name? I don't remember. They called us by numbers. Kestra's hands stilled for a moment, then continued their work with renewed purpose. Then we'll find you a new one, something that belongs to you alone. She worked. Kestra caught sight of the small holographic display Joran kept in each treatment room, seemingly random news feeds, but actually coded messages from the network Zara had built. Updates on successful extractions, warnings about hunter movements, requests for medical assistance at safe houses across the galaxy. Sister was still out there, still playing the role of Imperial Hunter, while secretly shepherding the vulnerable to safety. They hadn't spoken since that night in the Crimson Quarter. But her presence was felt in every message, every life saved. Every small victory against the systems that ground the powerless into dust. Doctor, the young patient's voice brought her back to the present. Will it hurt? Getting free, I mean? Kestra considered the question seriously. Yes, she said finally. Freedom always hurts at first. But the pain fades, and what remains is yours to choose. Later that evening, as the clinic settled into quiet, Joran found her on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. He settled beside her without speaking, offering the companionable silence she'd learned to treasure. Message from Voss, he said eventually, handing her an encrypted datapad. 3 more transport requests this week. Word spreading that there's a place where people can heal. We'll need more supplies. Medical gear, identity documents, clean credits for the ones who want to start over somewhere else. Already working on it. He paused, studying her profile in the golden light. Any regrets? Kestra thought about chains and cages, about the woman who'd clawed her way to freedom through blood and determination. Then she thought about the garden. Growing behind them, the patients who arrived broken and left whole, the network of former victims who'd become protectors. Just one, she said finally, that it took so long to realize freedom isn't something you take, it's something you give. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, infinite points of light in the vast darkness. Each one a possible destination for those still seeking their way home. And in the clinic behind them, another refugee slept peacefully, dreaming of tomorrow and the choices that would be hers alone to make. The girl who had ruled the wastelands through fear had become something greater, a guardian of hope in a galaxy that desperately needed light. And in the quiet moments between crises, surrounded by the life she'd chosen to build, Kestra finally understood what victory really meant. It meant waking up free and helping others do the same.